Baruch Hashem Noahides. We will now continue with Yesodei haTorah from the Mishneh Torah of the Rambam. And we will now continue with Perek Dalet, which is the fourth chapter, in the Maaseh Bereshit. And this specific section of Maaseh Bereshit is simply focusing on the first heaven, our realm. Everything under the sphere of the moon or under the Rakia or the second heaven. So this is only focusing on our realm, which is the four elements. Meaning from the midpoint until the highest point of our sphere, of the sphere of, as the Gemara calls it, the first heaven or the Vilon, meaning our atmosphere. So from the midpoint until the highest part is the four energies. And the first energy is the earth, higher than that is air, higher than that is the energy of, water, then air, and then the highest fire. And everything that exists, now this is a Torah concept, and this, the concept of the four elements or four energy and the four energy levels, so to speak, is also a fact found in the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah, in the Midrashim as well. It's a better word is energy field or electromagnetic field. However, these energy fields are four different energy fields, and they are named after these four substances: earth, water, air, and fire. And the Rambam will explain why they are named after these names, because they have certain characteristics. Okay, in this section we delve into the Maaseh Bereshit, and we will also see something very interesting, and that is how Rambam 1,000 years ago with the Torah solves quantum mechanics. So quantum mechanics is how matter behave on a subatomic level, on a subatomic scale, meaning the subatomic particles, how they interact, and what type of science or laws of physics do they adhere to. So that is what quantum mechanics basically is, when on that small scale, to determine what is the definitive scientific rules of those subatomic particles. Now, in the Torah, everything is in the Torah, and since this is very close to us, meaning it's not in the second heaven, and Hashem says something very interesting in the Torah, and this is why Rambam writes in the Mishneh Torah concerning the Ptolemaic system. Now, the reason for this is Hashem says in the Torah, the heavens belong to Hashem and the earth belongs to mankind. Meaning, be sure that in the realm of humans, they will have knowledge of that. However, in the heavenly realms and those above you, you will not necessarily have full knowledge of that. Obviously, in our time, Hashem increased the technology, etc., so we can know a bit more And that also means, obviously, that the earth was given for humans to live, and therefore that also directly contradicts the people who think there are life on other planets, because the earth belongs to man and the heavens belongs to Hashem. So according to the Torah, there is no such thing as life on other planets, but that's just a quick thought on that. But let's start this very interesting chapter, and this chapter is also continuing Rambam's explanation on loving and fearing Hashem. So let's continue. Arba'im gufim halalu shehem אש ורוח ומים וארץ הם יסודות כל הנבראים למטה מן הרקיע. These four bodies, fire, wind, water, and earth, are the fundamental elements of all the creations below the sky. So as I mentioned earlier, these four energy fields exist one above the other. It doesn't exist through the other one. It exists one above the other one. And all of creation under the sky, under the second heaven, meaning in our atmosphere until the midpoint, consists of these four energy fields. And today, with our technology, we actually now can understand what they're talking, what the Rambam actually means here, that all matter, which we understand today, when you break down all matter, you get to the atom. Okay? Now that atom consists of these four energy fields. And as we now will read, Rambam will explain it. Everything that exists, be it man, beast, fowl, crawling creature, fish, plant, metal, precious stone, pearl, building stone, mountain or lump of earth, the body of all these entities is a combination of these four fundamental elements. Thus, all the bodies which are found below the sky, meaning the rakia, the second heaven, as I explained earlier, the second heaven or the rakia starts basically about 965 kilometers above sea level. So it's very high up into the sky, where you can say the effects of the gravity, as we state in our language, basically, or atmospheric barometric conditions come to an end, basically. Now that also draws into question the whole gravitational theory, which started with Isaac Newton and continued with Einstein, that everything in the heavens affect everything else. In reality, that's not actually the case. The only effect you will have is in the realm of that body. And it's not the body that has the effect, but rather the energy fields with whom you interact. And the energy fields doesn't go on forever. It goes on until a certain area, and then it stops. And then the other energy fields take over, meaning there's also obviously energy fields when you go above that. But that doesn't mean that energy field comes from the earth or from the moon, from the sun. It's just the energy field of space itself. That also disproves the thing that they say, that the moon causes the sea to make waves. That's not correct. Okay. Thus, all the bodies which are found below the sky, with the exception of these four bodies, are a combination of matter and form. And their matter is a combination of these fundamental elements. These fundamental elements, however, are a combination of matter and form as they exist in the Helian state alone. Therefore, it seems like when these four energy fields come together the way Hashem created it, there was also form added. Now, what does it mean? It means that which actually cause it to exist, so to speak. It's like one cannot go without the other one. Matter and form cannot go without the other one. So we have these four energy fields. So let's take, for example, an atom. Let's take any atom. And we have these four energy fields now stuck together. And they now form some atom. And if those four elements, which is called matter, does not have the form, which actually also is also a necessary required, something that's required in order for this atom actually to exist, almost like holding it together or define it, then that atom will not be able to exist. And also, so there's actually two things therefore required for that atom to exist, is because of the nature of the matter. It if the rakia, the heavens, is not rotating, then that matter, even if it has form, will simply disappear, and the form obviously will also disappear. So since they are placed together, meaning the heavens rotates, and therefore these, let's say, these four elements, four energy fields, therefore one change into the other one. That's a necessity, because as I explained earlier, that's called decomposition. And as the one energy field turns into the other one, every now and then it decomposes, it loses energy. Some loses energy faster than others, depends on the composition. But that's not all that is required for the atom to exist, also the form. So Hashem had to bring all these things simultaneously in order for the atom to exist. And obviously they exist according to nature, and Hashem keeps everything in existence. So it's a very, very complex structure. We might say that the form is almost like a type of spiritual energy, spiritual force, defining the creation or the created thing. So let's continue with halacha 2. The tendency of fire and wind is to ascend upwards from the depths of the earth toward the sky. The tendency of water and earth is to descend from the sky to the midpoint of the sky, i.e. the center of the earth. For the midpoint of the sky is the lowest point below which nothing is lower. These tendencies are not a conscious matter, nor are they willful. Now this is basically where gravity basically has it right. Gravity have it right because gravity teaches that everything is attracted to the midpoint of Earth. And that's basically the law of gravity. Everything, however, they don't take into account those things that's not attracted to the midpoint. See, that's a bit of how can I say? I'll say contradictive, obviously not everything is actually attracted to the midpoint of Earth. For example, you can light a fire and you will see that, okay, it goes up. So obviously, why is it actually going up? Then obviously people will say, okay, well, we know why it's going up, because it's lighter. There's elements, there's particles around that's heavier. Because those particles are heavier, then obviously those lighter particles will therefore by nature go up. And that is correct. But that also aligns with the fact that there's a lighter element above. So it's very similar, but the only difference here is they turn the Earth into the source of that gravity, which is not correct at all. Meaning everything we are here because the Earth attracts us. Now that's almost correct, but because humans are made up, also according to the Rambam, out of majority of the element of Earth, meaning the electromagnetic field or the energy field named after Earth. That's why the Torah states Hashem made us out of the dust from the earth, and that simply means that that's our majority makeup. Now, obviously, I've heard it said that we are majority of water. However, that's not entirely correct. In terms of the nature of what they call water, it's not entirely correct. When a person actually examines the specific types of matter a person consists of, you will find that most of that is not actually from the element of water, but most of that is actually from the element of earth. Meaning we are going down. That's where we are attracted to. So when they say okay, well, the earth attracts us, that's because the element of earth attracts, not the earth itself. So therefore gravity is not from the earth, but rather from the energy fields. And also there is gravity that goes up, and there is one that goes down. Depends on it depends on the elements that makes up the specific created thing. These tendencies are not a conscious matter, nor are they willful, rather it's a pattern implanted within the nature they were given. The natural characteristics of fire are that it's warm and dry. So now the Rambam basically gives us more or less the explanation of why these energy fields are given these names. Meaning why are they called these names? And this is because they have certain characteristics. The natural characteristic of fire, and that is warm and dry. It is the lightest of all these fundamental elements. Wind is warm and moist. Water is cold and moist. And earth is dry and cold. So we have fire that's warm and dry. We have wind that's warm and moist. We have water, which is lower than that, which is cold and moist, and then we have earth, which is dry and cold. It is the heaviest of all these fundamental elements. Water is lighter than earth, therefore it is found above it. Now, when a person looks at these four energy fields, you will actually notice that when a substance contains mostly of the element of fire or the energy field of fire, that substance will decomposed much quicker. When the substance is mostly earth, it will decompose much slower. So it depends on how much of the substance, how much of each element is in a substance. Wind is lighter than water, therefore it hovers above it. Fire is even lighter than wind, meaning ruach, or air. Since these are the fundamental elements for all the bodies below the sky, meaning the second heaven, the matter of every single body, man, animal, beast, fowl, fish, plant, metal and stone, is a combination of fire, wind, water and earth. In the process of the combination of these four, each one of them changes while they are being combined. Thus, the combination of the four fundamental elements does not resemble any one of the elements as it exists alone. Similarly, in any combination of them, there cannot be found even one portion of fire as it exists alone, wind as it exists alone, water as it exists alone, nor earth as it exists alone. Rather, they have all changed and become a single body. So, meaning the substance that contains these four elements are in a constant change, meaning it is earth, water, air, fire in that substance, let's say an atom, for example, and in that atom, it constantly changes into another element, but it changes in such a way that water, air, earth, water, air and fire always exist. There's no state of existence where one of these elements is not existing. If one of these electromagnetic fields is not present, then everything will simply cease to exist, meaning everything will simply go back to its source. Okay, so it seems to me I misunderstood this one. Rambam actually here refers to the actual matter that was formed from the four elements, from the four energy fields. So it simply states, okay, so when it forms, when these four electromagnetic fields come together, it forms something. It depends on how much of each is inside this substance. Each and every body, which is a combination of these four fundamental elements, will have a combination of cold and warmth, moistness and dryness. There are some bodies which have a more powerful concentration of the fundamental element of fire, for example, creatures with living souls. Accordingly, they have a higher temperature. Conversely, there are some bodies with a more powerful concentration of the element of earth, for example, the stones. Accordingly, they are very dry. Similarly, some of them have bodies with a greater concentration of the element of water. Accordingly, they are moist. In this manner, one may find one body which is warmer than another body, which is itself warm, and one body drier than another body, which is itself dry. So it depends on how much of each energy field is in each substance. Similarly, there are bodies in which cold alone is noticeable, and other bodies in which moistness alone is noticeable. In some bodies, cold and dryness are equally noticeable. In others, cold and moistness are equally noticeable. In others, warmth and dryness are equally noticeable. And in others, warmth and moistness are equally noticeable. According to the predominance of the element that is found in the essential combination, the inclination and nature of that element will be expressed in a body resulting from a mixture of all the elements. So we know more or less the majority substance by, or the majority element, by looking at what kind of substance it is. Every entity which is a combination of these four fundamental elements will ultimately decompose into these elements. So this is what I explained earlier concerning decomposition, and it depends on which elements it consists of. Some decompose faster than others. Some will decompose after a mere few days, and others will decompose after many years. However, it is impossible for everything which is a combination of these elements not to decompose into them. It is impossible even for gold and ruby not to decompose and return to their fundamental elements. A portion becoming fire, a portion water, a portion wind, and a portion earth. Meaning, as the elements lose energy, as the energy fields loses energy, ultimately one of those elements will lose everything. The first one, quite possibly that will be the element of fire, because it decomposes the quickest of them all. So when the element of fire, for example, in that substance loses all its energy, then all the other energies or energy fields in that substance will return to their source, and the entire substance will simply cease to exist. So it is possible for a person to see, okay, at one point there's something, and then at another point, then, okay, there's no more anything. Why? Because one of the four elements disappeared. And it's not possible, according to the Torah, for a substance to exist with only three elements, or only two, or only one element. Since every entity will decompose and separate into these four fundamental elements, why was Adam told, "You'll return to dust," implying that man will return to dust alone? Because the major part of man's composition is from dust. So from here we also learn that the Torah only speaks generally. The Torah doesn't go on in exact details concerning the four elements. No, the Torah only states dust. According to the Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah, we know that this is not alone dust, but it is the main ingredient from how Hashem created man, and it consists majority from the element of earth. Every entity that decomposes will not return to the four fundamental elements immediately. Rather, it will decompose and change into another entity. That entity will in turn change into another entity, until ultimately it will return to the elements. Thus, all entities are constantly returning to the elemental state in a cycle. So even though I stated earlier, until the last of those elements disappear because of the decomposition, before that happens, obviously the elements themselves undergoes major changes. Now, since these elements gets reduced, that actually changes the substance itself. For example, let's take a piece of wood now, and let's place fire to that piece of wood. What is happening to the piece of wood? Now, the fire obviously is like a catalyst for decomposition. It hastens the decomposition of the wood, because because the fire, its energy state is heightened, and because of that, the state of decomposition is also heightened. So what happens to the piece of wood? All of a sudden you start to see a few things. You start to see smoke. Where does the smoke come from? All of a sudden you start to see water. It's also if you very, very little, but you still see water. All of a sudden you start to see that the wood itself becomes a bit different. It's like charcoal. So that is basically what happens here is, okay, that is one of the states of decomposition, is because it decomposes, it breaks up already into different substances. But also the piece of wood itself also changed into a different type of substance because it lost some of the energy. But since that piece of wood, which became charcoal, for example, still exists, we know that all four elements are still present in that substance. Otherwise, it could not have existed. Once one of the elements disappears in that substance, then that entire substance will obviously disappear as well. So it is like decomposition is like you have something, and then that substance changes, but because it decomposes, it also breaks up into different substances. It depends also, I think it depends also on the specific substance. But this is just how decomposition works. And as I explained earlier, decomposition doesn't exist in heaven, in the heavens, in the Rakia. It only exists here on earth. These four fundamental elements are in a constant state of flux with a certain portion, but never the entire matter of one changing into another every day and every hour. So this is what I actually explained earlier, because I was a bit confused earlier. But here is that explanation of one element in a substance turning into another one constantly. And there's no state of existence where actually you will have one element that's not there. It's always these four elements, and one changes into another one according to a specific order, which Rambam now will list here. What is implied? A portion of the earth which is close to the water changes. Now remember, the water is above the earth in that substance. Let's take an atom, for example, because now dealing with atomic physics or with quantum physics here. Rambam is now actually describing for us how the subatomic particles function, meaning the quantum mechanics. A portion of the earth which close to the water changes, dissolves, and becomes water. Similarly, a portion of the water which is close to the wind changes, evaporates, and becomes wind, meaning air. A portion of the wind or air which is close to the fire changes, goes through metamorphosis, and becomes fire. Similarly, a portion of the fire close to the wind or air goes through metamorphosis, changes, contracts, and becomes wind or air. The air which is close to the water changes, contracts, and becomes water. And the water which is close to the earth changes, contracts, and becomes earth. The cycle of change proceeds little by little over the course of time. Now, Rambam just explained to us the lowest. Let's take for example the foundational natural state of an atom, meaning let's say the lowest energy field is in the middle. That's the earth. Above it's water, above it's air, above it's fire. Now, what happens to this atom is each moment, the atom changes energy. So the earth becomes water, and the water above it, based upon the change that occurred below, the water actually becomes air, and the air becomes fire, and the fire becomes earth. So every change is exact. And every change, all four elements is there in a substance. And as I said earlier, this is because this change that causes it to continue to exist is because of the rotation of the heavens, as the Rambam now will explain here. Water becomes water becomes air, air becomes fire, fire becomes air, air becomes water, water becomes earth. Now above that, the air becomes fire, fire becomes earth, and they all changes exactly the same time, by the way. Every element changes exactly the same time. Air, fire, fire, earth, earth, water, water becomes earth, earth becomes fire, and the fire becomes earth, the earth becomes water, the water becomes earth, the earth becomes fire, and the fire becomes air, and then everything goes back and it all starts all over again. This is Rambam solving quantum mechanics. Okay, let's go on. The entire fundamental element will never change. For example, all the water will never become wind, nor all the wind fire, because it is impossible for the existence of one of the four fundamental elements to be nullified. Rather, why is it impossible? Because this is the nature of the vilon. This is the nature of the first heaven. The first heaven consists of four elements. So the nature of everything in that realm must contain four elements. Otherwise it cannot exist. Rather, a portion of the fire will change to wind, and a portion of the wind to fire. Similarly, between each pair of these four, change will go on in an unceasing recurrent cycle, meaning it doesn't end, forever, le'olam. The cycle of change is caused by the revolution of the sphere, meaning the second heaven. Its revolution causes the four fundamental elements to combine and thus forms the matter of men, living beasts, plants, stones, and metals. This is how God created it. God gives each body the form appropriate to it through the angel of the 10th level, which are the form called Ishim. You will never see matter without form, or form without matter. It is the heart of man which in its knowledge considers the bodies that are found and knows that they are a combination of matter and form. So as I explained earlier, form, as Rambam here states, surah, that simply gives, that's the spiritual force that defines the actual substance, and without which it cannot really exist also. It appreciates that there are bodies whose matter is a combination of the four fundamental elements, bodies whose matter is simple and contains only one type of matter, and forms which have no matter and cannot be seen by the eye. So now Rambam is mentioning high dimensions. The latter are discernible only to the eye of the heart. We can appreciate the existence just as we know of the existence of the matter of everything, though we do not see him with our eyes. So Rambam is just stating a fact here. We with our eyes cannot see everything. The soul of all flesh is the form which it was given by God. The extra dimension which is found in the soul of man is the form of man, which is perfect in his knowledge. Concerning this form, the Torah states, let us make man in our image and in our likeness, granting man a form which knows and comprehends ideas that are abstract, like the angels, who are form without body, until he can resemble them. This statement does not refer to the form of the body perceived by the eye, the mouth, the nose, the cheeks, and the remainder of the structure of the body. This is referred to as to'ar, appearance. It is not the soul found in all living flesh which allows it to eat, drink, reproduce, feel, and think. Rather, knowledge is the form of this dimension of soul, and it is concerning this form of the soul that the verse states, in our image and in our likeness. So we know that Hashem here actually addresses the angels. Let us make man in our image and in our likeness, meaning let us make them spiritual. That's what the Rambam actually tried to say here. Let us make them spiritual. And we also know that the speech of humans, and it's also actually proven by Dibukim, meaning souls of the dead that are wicked from Kafakela, that Hashem actually placed into the bodies of people while they are alive, and obviously this is called possession. Then the person actually speaks even though his mouth is closed. So how is it possible? Because there's another neshama inside of him, and he speaks. That's where a person's speech comes from. Your speech comes from your soul, your neshama. It's not a physical thing. Speech is not physical. It's purely spiritual, and there is where your speech comes from. Every person. The reason why they speak is because they have neshamot. And this is also therefore to disprove people who say some people don't have souls, which is complete nonsense. Everyone that has the natural inclination to speak have a neshama. Now, what about the people who cannot speak? Now, okay, so the neshama, while you are alive, are completely connected with your body. It's not loose like a dibuk that enters a person. Since it's connected to the body, it depends on the body for the speech. So if something is wrong inside your body, you will not be able to speak. However, your speech itself still comes from your neshama. This is why animals cannot speak. Under normal conditions, animals obviously cannot speak, and so also we see, for example, the very interesting story about Adam, Chava, and a snake in Gan Eden. Is because that snake actually didn't really speak like we understand. The Chava had the ability to speak all 70 languages, and Chava had the ability to speak to everything. Everything. Chava could speak to everything, any animal. There's a language for everything, even the trees. So Chava therefore had the ability to communicate with the snake, not because the snake spoke like a human. The snake could not speak because he did not have a soul. If the snake spoke, it means it had a soul. Now, the question is, okay, how was it possible for the donkey to speak? So there are different possibilities of how to answer this. But I'm not going to answer this now. Let's rather go on with the Mishneh Torah here. Is not the soul found? Sorry, so let's go on here. Frequently, this form is referred to as nefesh or ruach. Therefore, one must be careful regarding these names, lest another person err regarding them. Each name reveals its characteristics. The form of the soul is not a combination of the fundamental elements into which it will ultimately decompose, nor does it come from the neshama, so that it would require the neshama, as the neshama requires the body. Rather, it is from God, from heaven. Therefore, when the matter of the body, which is a combination of the fundamental elements, decomposes, and the neshama ceases to exist, for the neshama exists only together with the body and requires the body for all its needs. This form will not be cut off, for this form does not require the neshama. for its deeds. Rather, it knows and comprehends knowledge which is above matter, knows the creator of all things and exists forever. So we have the human body, we have the neshama, meaning which we call the nefesh bahami, the animal soul. And then, which is, I think, consists of fire, mostly from the element of fire. And then we have the obviously godly soul, or like the Rambam states here, the nefesh or the ruach. That is actually when the body dies, and obviously dying is painful and it's a whole process. After the person is buried, is chibut hakever, and between the beatings of the grave, and then after that, and that can take a time, depends on how many sins the person made, and that's necessary to break the klippah around your neshama in order to remove your neshama from your body. And that's some say that's worse than Gehinnom. So after the beatings of the grave, the ruach or the nefesh is therefore pulled out of the body by the malach hamavet, by the angel of death, and only then a person is completely dead. So when a person's life comes to an end, obviously, even though he's dead, his soul is not yet completely separated from his body. That only happens after the beatings of the grave. In his wisdom, Solomon said the following concerning it: the dust will return to the earth as it originally was, and the ruach will return to God who granted it. So here, Shlomo Melech refers to the body, which is made up majority of the element of earth, and the ruach, which is spiritual matter. So everything returns to its original place. Then the ruach or the nefesh returns to heaven, the spiritual realm. The body returns to, and the body consisting of the neshama and the physical body also then goes back to its actual elements. And then also there's the form, which Rambam actually spoke of all these that exists, and the form of all that exists also return back to their actual origins, which is actually a spiritual. I think that's a spiritual life-giving force that defines the substance. All these concepts which you have explained in this context are like a drop in a bucket. They are deep matters. Nevertheless, their depth does not approach the depth of the subject matter of the first and second chapter. Now, why does the Rambam say this? Because this is Maaseh Bereshit, act of creation, and the first two chapters is Maaseh Merkavah, act of the chariot. Act of the chariot is much deeper because that's spiritual, but physical matters are much more simple. And therefore, when it comes to the spiritual matters, the depth of the spiritual matters, a wise sage can only teach that in private to another wise sage. But the physical matters, a wise sage can teach that to anyone in private. The explanation of all the subject matter in the third and fourth chapters is referred to as Maaseh Bereshit. The sages of the early generations commanded that these matters should not be expounded upon in public, rather one by one. Individuals should be informed about them and taught them. What is the difference between the subject matter of Maaseh Merkavah and the subject matter of Maaseh Bereshit? The subject matter of Maaseh Merkavah should never be expounded upon even to a single individual unless he is wise and capable of understanding, in which instance he is given fundamental points. In contrast, the subject matter of Maaseh Bereshit may be taught to an individual even though he is incapable of comprehending it with his own powers of understanding alone. He may be informed about everything that he can possibly know about these matters. Why are they not taught publicly? Because not every person has the vast knowledge necessary to grasp the interpretation and explanation of these matters in a complete manner. So this means when it comes to teaching even Maaseh Bereshit, the act of creation, the physical creation, not the spiritual realms, only the physical realms, it's only private one-on-one with anyone. Why? So that the person actually understands what he should understand. Otherwise, the person will not be able to actually understand fully, because different people are on different levels when it comes to this. When a person meditates on these matters and recognizes all the creations, the angels, the spheres, man, and the like, and appreciates the wisdom of the Holy One, blessed be He, in all these creations, he'll add to his love for God. His soul will thirst, and his flesh will long with love for God, blessed be He. He will stand in awe and fear from his humble, lowly, and base nature when he compares himself to one of the great and holy bodies, how much more so when comparing himself to the pure forms which are separate from matter and do not share any connection with it. He will see himself as a vessel full of embarrassment and shame, empty and lacking, meaning humble, becoming humble before Hashem. That's the thing, becoming humble before Hashem. And this Rambam obviously now once again turn to why did we just discuss all of these? In order that we love Hashem and fear Hashem. The matters discussed in these 4 chapters concerning these 5 mitzvot are what the sages of the early generations termed the pardes, as they related 4 into the pardes. Even though they were great men of Israel and great sages, not all of them had the potential to know and comprehend all these matters in their totality. So this is what the sages teach in the Gemara: 4 entered the pardes, and so only Rav Akiva came out normal. 1 became a heretic, 1 died, and 1 became crazy. Therefore, when it comes to the pardes, it's not for everyone, meaning the deep matters. I maintain that it's not proper for a person to stroll in the pardes unless he has filled his belly with bread and meat. So, before a person can actually go in there, he must do his best according to his ability first to know and understand all the things he should understand from the Torah. And therefore a person must have a rabbi in order to tell him whether he should or could go into the pardes. Bread and meat refer to the knowledge of what is permitted and what is forbidden, and similar matters concerning other commandments. Meaning first learn how to actually be a human being according to the Torah, and how to first actually focus on what matters. So knowledge of the deep things, if you don't have the correct foundation, then that knowledge will not help you. In fact, it will actually cause you to stumble. So if your foundation is not rooted firmly in the ground, and you go and want to learn things that's very deep, you will uproot your foundation, and then you will simply become Either you will lose your mind or you'll become a heretic, as we saw in the Gemara. Even though the sages refer to these as a small matter, for our sages said a great matter, this refers to Maaseh Merkava, a small matter, that this refers to the debates of Abai and Rava. Nevertheless, it is fitting for them to be given precedence because they settle a person's mind. Also, they are the great good which the Holy One, blessed be He, has granted to allow for stable living within this world and the acquisition of the life of Olam Haba. They can be known in their totality by the great and the small, man or woman, whether they have been granted expansive knowledge or limited knowledge. So obviously here it seems like Rambam is speaking about Maaseh Bereshit, the act of creation, which can be known by anyone. According to the specific way that it functions, the mechanics of the Maaseh Bereshit, of the physical creation itself as it exists in the first heaven and in the second heaven. Now, before I conclude this chapter, I just want to mention something. According to modern science, the atom consists of a proton or protons, neutrons, and electrons, according to modern science. And then modern science states all the rest are empty space. However, there was findings to show that actually disprove that it's not really empty space, it's actually energy. And they also proved that the energy changes, there are energy changes that takes place inside the atom, exactly as the Rambam describes it. So obviously it's not really empty space. And how is it possible for modern science to say, okay, there's a proton, neutron, electrons, while the Torah states, no, it's actually just plain energy. So why the difference? The answer is there is no real difference. The modern science is in error because they think that is the matter that makes up the atom. And that's not correct. The reason why there are the proton and the neutron and the electron is because of the energy fields of which it consists of. So depends on which four of these four elements, the amount of these four elements is inside the atom, and according to that there will be the amount of the protons, neutrons, and electrons. And the protons, neutrons, electrons, not real particles. It is only charges. So the charge of the positive charge and the negative charge and the neutral charge is dependent on the energy it consists of. Okay. This concludes this very interesting chapter of Maaseh Bereshit. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek, be strong, and may we be strengthened.